This is Connor Tomlinson saying about Douglas Murray's right. When Douglas Murray says that we need more, we need less Islamists,
are responsible
but you
for
can listen.
94% of all deaths and 88% of all injuries caused in terror attacks since 1999.
So let's listen to that statistic one more time because I was speaking.
Islamists are responsible for 94% of all deaths and 88% of all injuries caused in terror attacks since 1999. They're 80% of counter-terror police and 75% of MI5's open caseload and 63% of terrorists in custody. That's despite the official statistics, according to the 2021 census, a little bit out of date.
So, but if you say that, you're a racist, even though they're just facts. And we get told that we can't talk about it because it's racist. No, it's just a fact. And you're going to see some left wingers now going, well, that's racist.
Of them being only 6.5% of the population. They're 18% of the prison population on the whole. So if you were to tell me that, a very slim minority of the country was responsible for over 75 to 80% of all terrorists, I might think there might be a problem in that community.
Joe, I mean, you'll presumably agree with Douglas Murray that there is a problem with Islamic extremism. We all want to combat that. But what did you think of what he had to say about less Islam?
Well, I think you were charitable in saying that he was talking to you earlier. I mean, he was sneering in a very self-satisfied way with a extreme arrogance.
You mean the exact same way that you're talking to him right now?
I think, frankly, his contribution there was actually about sowing division, about trying to pit groups of people against each other.
And you said this when it was estimated that 150,000 children have been abused by Pakistani Muslim rape gangs since 2000. You said this when the 6,000 girls got abused through the rape gangs. And you also told the young girls, well, Labour Party did, that they should be quiet for diversity. And you're telling the girls that are being raped still, as of 2025, that are being abused by these rape gangs that are still continuing day to day, and to the people that are coming here to rape children because they know they're going to get away with it, and you tell the children to be quiet for diversity.
There is no contradiction, nor should anyone say that there is, between being appalled at the acts of October the 7th, of the atrocities that Hamas carried out, and also being appalled at the violence meted out to children in Gaza hospitals. I think most people watching this show would.
The Gaza hospitals that was used for Hamas, that was hiding underneath it, which has been proven time and time again that Hamas had tunnels used underneath the hospitals and was firing from the hospitals at the armies and shooting their own people. That's been proven time and time again.
Would feel appalled and horrified at both of those circumstances. And part of the problem here is when people are told they have to choose a side. Actually, this is about whether...
Nope, you don't have to pick a side. You can just lay the facts out. Did Hamas kill a lot of children? 100%. Has Israel killed children? Yes. Has Israel killed reporters? Yes. In the Iraq War, there was 100 reporters killed, 50 support staffs around about. I think at the end of the Iraq War, there was 200 reporters and support staff killed. There was 1 million people killed. There was children killed. There was adults killed. Something Alalaki, a boy was killed that was 16 that had nothing to do with the war, and the Americans killed him because his dad was a terrorist and they blew his son up so then they could get his son or something. I think the story goes they got the father later on when he was at the son's funeral or something like that, as far as I remember. It's been a long time since I read that one story. But yeah,
whether or not you're taking the side of division or whether or not you want to have the side of people getting along and living alongside one another.
People will never get along when you have a religion involved, and that includes Christianity, Buddhists. Look at China. Million Muslims killed. Gone. Not one MP gave a shite at the time.
Or another in a country, as most people want to do and as mostly happens. And I think, frankly, the message that he is peddling is one of division.
Murray is a man who has said of Humza Yousaf, who was the First Minister of Scotland, that he had infiltrated the British political system.
He was standing up for Palestinians from day one and saying that Hamas and that should be able to leave and come to, I think it was Hamas or Palestinians should be allowed to come to the UK as refugees and to the rest of the West, when they was sitting there saying, even the ones that were sitting there saying Hamas was right and actually was involved in the attacks on the 7th.
Yousaf is someone who was born in Britain.
So are a lot of other terrorists, mate. Just because they're born here doesn't mean that they do not want to be terrorists.
Born in Scotland. This man is an extremist, in my view.
He calls him an extremist, but he can't call Muslim extremists because he wants to stay politically out. He's an absolute twat.
And the Overton window, which we talked about earlier, has shifted so significantly that, and I don't criticise Newsnight for doing it, that he has been given an 8-minute interview on prime BBC television. And that is...
Well, he was on the BBC, so it ain't prime anything. The BBC hasn't been prime television or prime news for a long time.
Concerning, because more and more people, it seems to me, share his repulsive views. Imagine, just for a...
No, most of the population believe that Islam is a problem. And the problem is, Muslims are not doing anything about it. All you get straight after is, well, we didn't say anything because he's from the Muslim community. That shouldn't have anything to do with it. I'm sorry, but it shouldn't. Anyone that has any idea that a extremist attack's going to happen that does nothing about it should be deported. If they was born here, they should be put in jail. If you know about a terrorist act that's going to happen and you stay quiet, then you should be prosecuted for it. I don't care if you're white, black, Muslim, Protestant. I don't care. Buddhist, there you go.
For a moment, Nick, being one of the millions of British Muslims, law-abiding British Muslims, watching him say those things.
We did question him.
They'd have to get over it. Just like we did when the girls got raped and anyone that mentioned it was a racist, a bigot, Islamophobic.
First on Jo Swinson, I mean, this is a woman who couldn't tell the difference between a man and a woman on LBC. So morally speaking, I don't think she can tell the difference between her bum and her belt buckle. So I don't really trust her opinion on anything, frankly. As far as saying there's no law of contradiction between being appalled at the murders and rapes on October the 7th and the death of children in Gaza, well, 75% of British Muslims disagree with you, according to Henry Jackson's Society polling, because they don't believe that Hamas did anything wrong.
So 75% of the UK population, Muslim population, don't believe what Hamas did to the Jews was wrong. That was the statistic he just said.
75%. That's not 1%. That's not 0.1%. That's not a sliver of fringe extremists. That's the overwhelming majority of British Muslims. And that is mainly concentrated, by the way, among second-generation university-educated Muslim men aged 18 to 24. Now, that means, one, integration isn't working, and two, that problem's only going to get worse because last year, the most popular baby name in the country was Mohammed. Obviously, they're not very creative at names, but you get my point. It's going to have a demographic, then democratic momentum. And so these people are supporting a terror group who, sure, you don't need to be Jewish. I have no more connection to Israel than I do Iceland, frankly. But a terror group that blames Britain for the creation of the State of Israel and therefore affords us the exact same collective guilt that they do to the Jews. By the way, if you read the Quran, and an Islamist is just, you know, a Muslim who takes the Quran a bit too seriously. If you try and draw the distinction, you end up in the weird territory of asking, was the Prophet Muhammad an Islamist? Obviously. If you read the Quran and the subsequent hadiths, it says that on Judgment Day, the rocks and the trees will come alive with the spirit of Allah and shout where a Jew is hiding behind them so that you can come and kill them. And that was cited in Hamas's charter. So if you're wondering why it constantly rockets,
and I think that's now, it was 0.1 in Hamas charter, now I think it's 0.2.
its neighbors, there might be a reason for you. As well, if I may, in Douglas's book, he outlines this very well, so he can tell the story a lot better than I can. But lots of the buildings that are leveled in Gaza at the moment are not just because of indiscriminate airstrikes by Israelis, but because Hamas have embedded themselves in hospitals, schools, and even hidden under grandmothers in wheelchairs to use them as human shields to shoot at the IDF. And the IDF have been using disarming technology to remote detonate weapons caches and booby traps. And it turns out that every second or third house is full of these kinds of booby traps. They're stationing RPGs under children's cribs. So in order to go in and extract hostages, they have to detonate the bombs beforehand. And it just turns out pretty much every house on the block blows up because that's these kinds of absolute savages. In terms of Matthew Stadlen, I mean, it's hilarious that he feels credible to call himself an extremist because, one, if Ofcom wasn't mandating midwits like him be brought on, he wouldn't be able to earn a living. But Stadlen's views that, you know, cultural differences are entirely arbitrary, that we can have people from other countries and completely incompatible worldviews live side by side and live out John Lennon's.
It's never worked in the history of mankind, and it never will do. You can't have a society that believes that you can't have sex with someone until they're 16 in the UK, and then another society that believes from the age of 9 you can have sex with a child. And before people go, oh, we don't believe it's the age of 9, we have I've got multiple videos of Muslims saying that they are willing to give their daughters up that are 9 years old if they want to get married to a man as old as anything, up to 60, 70, if that child wants it. That child, 9 years old, can get married as long as she's had her first period. And there's multiple videos of that on my channels. So before anyone comes up with the bull crap, that's not what the religion says. Maybe you should talk to the people in the religion.
Imagine, and that of course a man can become a woman. It's such a sliver, a blip in history, that hundreds of billions of people that have lived before and after him will see him as an absolute fruitcake. So the idea that he is an arbiter of what is and isn't extreme, laughable. And so I don't know whether or not Stadlen will just say any old lie to ensure that he keeps his TV spot and his proximity to power, or if he genuinely believes it. But the net effect is the same. He's delusional and dangerous. As far as Joe Swinson and the like just saying, oh, it's just and the BBC, it's just a problem with a minority of fringe radicals. You know, the Abedi family do not represent the majority of Muslims in
74% is not the minority or a fringe group.
this country. By the way, the Abedi family, the British taxpayer paid for that nail bomb that killed those 22 girls because the Abedi family were using their housing benefits, and the Abedi son was using his student loan at the time. And the Abedi family moved back to Libya a month before the attack and refused to comply with the subsequent inquiry, which is very curious. But as far as the idea that Islamic extremism isn't that much of a problem, let me just read off some stats for you. Islamists are responsible for 94% of all deaths and 88% of all injuries caused in terror attacks since 1999. They're 80% of counter-terror police and 75% of MI5's open caseload and 63% of terrorists in custody. That's despite the official statistics, according to the 2021 census, a little bit out of date, of them being only 6.5% of the population. They're 18%.
We see this at the beginning, but yep. So people are lying and people are trying to cover up how bad the problems are. And they take you for fools. I think he said it perfectly. And like I said, that's Connor Tomlinson. I do like him sometimes. I'm not a great lover of the Lotus Eaters. I watch them sometimes. I don't agree with everything they say. Like with all of them, I agree with parts. I agree with the left sometimes, I agree with the right sometimes, and I agree with the middle sometimes. My opinions are my opinions. I'm not in any of their groups. I don't support Reform, Labour, Lib Dems, the Greens, Tories, none of them. My opinions are my opinions.